Welcome to the Real Positive Change podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Freeman, and this is a place where art and wellness gently come together, a space where women can pause, breathe, and renew their souls. Here we talk about how artistic expression through creating, writing, and crafting becomes a powerful support for both the mind and the body. A simple practice I call Creative Reminders helps you slow your thoughts, calm your heart, and notice God's presence in your everyday life. So wherever you are today, driving, folding, laundry, or sitting with a cup of something warm, take a breath and let's begin. Hello, welcome to Real Positive Change podcast. I'm doing something a little different this time. I'm actually going live. Well, this is recorded, but I went live with another fellow artist, and her name is Kim Pepper. I had the most delightful conversation with her. I had some specific questions that I gave to her that I wanted her feedback on, and I think you will enjoy this. Some of it has to do with the conflict that we feel about sitting down and creating just for ourselves, or creating something and not feeling like it has to have monetary value. We actually made a little discovery while we were in the midst of our conversation. Something came to my mind that I'd never thought of before. So I'm going to go ahead now and share this with you. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. All right, welcome. I want to introduce my guest here today. This is probably the first guest that I've actually had on my podcast since I've been doing this now for several months. And this is Kim Pepper. I would like to introduce Kim to you. And I'm going to read something that I found on her site that I just loved what she had written here. And she basically says, I'm a wife, a mom, creative, and Christian. Over a decade ago, I started my blog, Salvage Living, now called KimPepperBlog.com. God called me to it. I know how that goes. Isn't that wonderful when that happens? I desperately needed to get the ideas out of my head and into the world. Over the years, I've learned that creating is not an option for me, but a necessity. Creativity helped me process my rough divorce and all that brings with it. Creativity is the safe space I enter to sit with the Lord, decompress, process, cry, learn, grow, and connect. I am an encourager that will walk beside you. I'll help you find your sweet spot where your heart, faith, soul, and creativity combine. It blows my mind that I get the opportunity to help women every single day. I love it so much. I had come across this quite a while ago, and periodically, Kim, you don't know this, but your feed comes across my, Facebook, and so I'll see different things, and I love seeing them and what you do in that. And we were talking a few minutes ago. My goal for this particular podcast is to address the parts when we are going through challenges, new experiences in our life that maybe are welcomed or mostly unwelcomed. How we can really pull upon that inner part of us. We were talking a minute ago that it's not about creating somebody new. It's about going back to who we were or are within us, and really relying on God to help us to develop that. And then I wanted to ask her to share her story about how art really was such a great, wonderful help for her as she went through the divorce when she did go through that. Do you mind just taking a few minutes and sharing with us?
Sure. Where do you want me to start? What do you want me to?
I know I threw it all at you there, didn't I? What's the first thing that pops in your head? Because this is very casual.
I think in relation to the conversation that we're having today is talking about creativity and getting through a hard spot. So essentially, like what you said, I started a blog over 10 years ago. I think it's almost 12 years or 11 and a half years now. Really just as a creative outlet. It was just for fun. God kind of called me to that. I was married. I had 3 children, and it was really an accountability partner for me to get ideas out. I thought it would be fun to make maybe some money on the side and pay for vacations or something like that. Nothing too big of a deal. And I did it for a long time, and I really loved what I did. It was always faith. It was more of home decor and DIY type projects. I've always been crafty or creative, I guess, in my life. But in the very, very beginning of 2020, my husband left, and we went through a very blindsiding divorce that I did not see coming. And people say that, and you kind of wonder if that can be true or not. And it very much so was true for me. I didn't know that was going to happen. And all of a sudden I went from being, technically a stay-at-home mom who had a small business that was just for fun, to trying to figure out how I was going to manage doing all of this, or what was I going to do and still be the mom that I wanted to be to my kids. And about the same time that this started happening, lockdown started happening, the kids were at home, homeschooling, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't do anything. I was literally dying inside. And I had a little devotional journal, because the very true thing about 2020 that was actually a gift to me is I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't have to do anything but focus on my kids and myself. And that allowed me to have a lot of time to read, pray, read books, read the Bible, do devotionals, just ask. I don't know that I've ever been so close to the Lord as I was that year. So I had this gut-wrenching year, but this sweet amount of time. And so anyway, I had a devotional, and I started it. And for whatever reason, I started doodling pictures and things that were just coming to my mind. And I ended up finishing the whole devotional book, which for me was like a massive feat. I've never done that before, because I just get too distracted. I don't like to write. I'm not a writer. It's really hard for me. And so I lose interest and attention. I'm off on the, to-do list in about 3 minutes. And so I kind of was like, I think there's something to this. This is interesting. So I ended up moving to an altered book and just drawing and painting just my feelings, because they were awful. I mean, my feelings were awful, and I did not want to write words. I didn't want my kids to find it and read it. I didn't want them to know what my heart was feeling or what I was thinking. I just needed it to be private, but I needed it to get out. And so creativity just became this really big outlet for me in that time frame. And that kind of started it all, I guess. I ended up getting remarried and moving to a different part of the state. And I never did that creativity online with my audience or the people who were following me at that time. It was just for me.
Right.
But I did ramp my business up in different ways. And so when I moved, I felt like God was telling me to move away from that and to go more public and forward, I guess, with that creative part. Because when I moved down here, I found myself going back to that. And not this time, it wasn't for necessarily that sad reason or gut-wrenching reason. It was just a really fun outlet for me to process. And so that's kind of where this started. And then I ended up kind of going all in, I guess, with it, and wanting other people to know the freedom in it. And I think we don't all learn and express ourselves the same ways. And so things that were hard for me before, because I wasn't a sit down and read and write person, this changed everything for me. Being able to invite my creativity into my faith was just a really big game changer. And so I kind of want other women to know that, if they're bent that way as well.
Yes.
That was a lot there.
No, that's exactly what. So really what popped into my head is, and we had talked about this a second ago, sometimes as, I don't know if I want to classify a person, women, artists, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to put a classic on it. I just noticed that even for myself, if I can't figure out the purpose or why I'm creating this, or what the end all will be for it, sometimes it's very hard to sit down and create. Now, people will call that the white page. But I think now that I'm sitting here talking to you this very second, That's what's coming to my mind, is perhaps it's that one side of our brain. And obviously, if you've ever listened to my podcast, I do talk a lot about how our thoughts affect us and our mind and what goes on. And so our left brain is going, well, wait a minute. We need something for this to why are we doing this? And the right side's like, don't worry about it. Let's just have fun, and there's this conflict.
It's a tug of war for sure. I talked about this with someone the other day that I think we just live in a society that wants everything to have a value, and usually it's a monetary value or a worth of some sort, something you can use, you can reproduce, you can, somebody finds valuable in some way, shape, or form. And so we talk ourselves out of it. So I think that's interesting, though, about the white page, because that is like people are fearful of that blank page and where do I start? But I think you might be right. We are maybe just automatically are jumping to the end of like, well, so what if I start? What am I going to do in the end? Because people say that all the time. Oh, well, you have this journal. Now what do you do with it? And, you said that. And I hear that all the time. And I'm like, you don't have to do anything with it. I mean, the beauty of it is I don't know. I have a couple things I say. Number one, if you, who here, sorry, I have a dog that's going crazy.
That's just fine.
And who wouldn't want a journal full of their grandmother's drawings or their grandmother's written prayers or sketches? I mean, I think everybody would want that, So there is value in it, whether you see it or not. And the other thing is it's just really not about art. It's kind of more about prayer and that time with the Lord. And so I don't think any of us have a problem. We don't judge people for saying, I'm going to go pray for 10 minutes. I'm going to go read my Bible for 10 minutes. So why should we judge someone who wants to just pray through art for 10 minutes or talk to the Lord through creativity for 10 minutes? It's not any different. That's like saying a prayer is wasted. Prayers aren't wasted ever. And so I think that's the really beautiful thing about this is when you invite your faith into your creativity, it is different than just sitting down and drawing. Not that there's anything wrong with sitting down and drawing for the joy of it. But for me, a lot of the times it's a sacred space. And so I think when you start to accept that, you get over it a little bit, that it's wasteful. And it doesn't matter if anybody sees it. It doesn't matter if it's not museum worthy. It just doesn't matter. Because that's not the point.
That's true.
It's a really big mind shift, I think that you have to kind of overcome to be able to really have freedom. To
do that. Yeah. Yes. And it's wonderful to be able to, take the time to create something that you feel like, okay, this is going to be, something someone will want to hang on the wall. But like we said, the value, I truly believe this for women, is there is a lack of value for ourselves. Even though we do value ourselves, I think we tend to put our value in what we do. Mm-hmm. I ran my kids here. I did this. I went and helped this person. I went and did this, all the do things. But for ourselves, to give ourselves that time, that's what I feel is super important, because there's not much of us to give if we're all stressed out.
I mean, it's a very classic, Martha and Mary. And Jesus says, Martha, she's choosing what's better. She's sitting at my feet, and that will not be taken from her. And I think we have to really remember that all the time, because we do. I think as women, we say, okay, well, these chores are acceptable. If it's okay if I spend time taking my kids to gymnastics and baseball, but it's not okay if I spend 15 minutes in my art room.
Or 30 minutes. You know what I mean?
It's like
an hour. We need an hour.
Why is that not okay? But
right.
You always think, well, I should be doing the laundry, or maybe I should be, doing the grocery list or making dinner or something like that. And just there's a point, I don't know. It gets frustrating because you have to put your oxygen mask on, first. There's a point where you have to take care of yourself, take care of everybody around you.
True. I agree with you. So, what would you say to somebody that, okay, I want to sit down, I want to do this, I love what she said, I'm going to give myself some time here? What would be the first thing you would tell them to do, or the first step or something?
To start kind of a creative journal.
Yes, or yes, just to create, and not necessarily have to have it be a super project, but to do it, like you said, with the Lord and for ourselves, to build
Yeah,
them.
I think a couple things that are make it easier is to start small. So a small book, a small piece of paper. Don't go buy a huge artist pad or something like that. You're not going to do a huge canvas. Get a little bitty book, or just get some sheets and cut them down to small sizes, whatever you want to do. It's less intimidating. I would limit your supplies. Just pick something that you like. Do you really like watercolors? Do you like markers? Do you want colored pencils? What is it? Do you have crayons at your house? Because that's all you have. That's fine too. I mean, they all work. So just limit it. And then I do a lot of times, I'll just take my Bible and be like, boop, open it and pick something. What do you have for me today? Or if you're like me and you're the kind of person who a traditional devotional book doesn't work for you, like you lose interest too quickly, you can still work out of that, but in a different way. So instead of responding to a traditional devotional book where it'll have maybe a verse and then a reflection, and then it'll ask you some questions. Well, instead of like writing out those questions that you're thinking, I'm lost before I even get to the second one, respond with art. And maybe that looks like you just draw one word and doodle around it, or maybe it makes you think of a bird, and so you kind of sketch out a bird, or maybe it's you think of a rainbow. I don't know, whatever it is. But respond with color, respond with shapes, respond with doodling. And if that is who you are, if that's where you're kind of more bent in your learning, you'll fill a book up before you know it. I mean, it's just different. When you see people who can do those writing journals and journal every day, I aspire to be that, but I can't stay vested in it. It just doesn't work for me. So those are kind of my tips to start small, and just remember that this is between you and the Lord. It's not for anybody else to see. It's not for anybody else. Nobody's judging you. It's a piece of paper. You can throw it away if you hate it. It's very inexpensive to do as well, because you can literally use crayons and paper or markers, or, something very inexpensive to get started.
Now, when you said, I'm going to go back to something you talked about with when you're going through divorce and that, and you were dealing with all those emotions, and you said you wanted to get your emotions out on paper, but I know I've gone through some of my written journals of years past, and, those days that you're having a terrible day and you write down all this stuff. I've gone through and ripped those out because I don't want anybody reading that,
Right.
So when you do this, have you kept those journals just because of part? Okay, I think it's awesome. Yes.
Yeah, but nobody
knows.
I could give it to you and you wouldn't know what it was about, but I do, and God does. I mean, sometimes I do need to write. So I'll write a prayer, but then I paint over it. I, collage over it, and it kind of goes away, but it becomes part of the art. And I mean, often I will just write my prayer out and then just cover it. And I get it out and it feels cathartic, but it doesn't feel exposed. It doesn't feel as vulnerable as thinking somebody's going to read this and take it the wrong way, or, hear something that's private. I don't want anybody to hear. And just for me, the act of being physically moving and stuff while I'm doing it is what keeps my mind focused. So the longer I can layer on paint, sketch, collage, doodle, mixed media, whatever, the longer I can sit on those thoughts that I'm having, if I'm pouring them out, and God will meet me there, and, he'll walk me through it. He'll talk me through it. And sometimes I'm shocked, at what he says. Sometimes he calms me down. Sometimes he asks me hard questions. Sometimes I ask him hard questions, but it's just this place where it's different than just sitting in prayer or just writing a response. It's just different for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Something that keeps coming back to my mind, and I want to bring this up really quickly. I don't know why, but it's just in my mind. I think as individuals who perhaps are, they don't feel that they're skilled in sketching or drawing or anything like that, there's this intimidation to, if the scripture says something that makes you think of a vase. You talked about that. When you're reading something, an image will come to your mind. Well, God speaks in images. That's how he's always, those that have ears to hear can hear. Anyway, if an image comes to your mind, I think there's an intimidation of, oh, I can't draw, or that's not going to look right. How wonderful would it be just to put it down and let it be however it needs to be, and not worry about, are the two sides just right? Is it, and let it just be the way it is. How wonderful would that be? And to know that that's okay. I think the other thing that just popped in my head too is God accepts all things from us. It doesn't have to be a perfect, but he takes the little bits and pieces. It's him who makes things perfect.
It's really, I think, about the reality of why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. Because sometimes I just have to think about what's not happening versus what is happening. God is not going to tell me, Kim, that was a bad prayer. I mean, he's just not. He's not going to be like, Kim, you did that prayer wrong.
That's right.
He's not going to say that to me. So if I draw something, do you really think he's going to be like, well, that was awful? No, because that's, I mean, it's the same as singing. We talk about singing in church and people don't want to sing. I cannot sing. I have no musical ability at all. But I mean, I don't think God's up there going, Kim, gosh, I wish you would be quiet. Like, you really aren't, you're out of tune. And he just doesn't, that's not his character. That's not who he is. It is praise, it is worship, it is love, it's our expression of it, and it can be out of tune, it can be out of color, it can be wonky and sideways, and I don't think that matters. I think what matters is the heart behind it, and it's a mind shift. It really, really is, and I feel really confident about it because I've had that mind shift. I believe what I'm saying because I've seen it and I felt it, and that's what I want other people to let themselves off the hook on that this is not, you're not being judged. God is not judging your creativity or your artistic ability. He doesn't care. I mean, if you just glue some colored paper on a page and write a word across it, that is fine. It's fine.
Yes. His goal is that we can have a few minutes to breathe, come back to who we really are inside, and be able to hear him. And if there's too much clutter going on or too much emotion that we're looping around, we tend to block him with that. And he's given us this gift of art as a wonderful tool. Yes, it can be something that, it can be made into beautiful, but how beautiful it is that we're able to put something down and be able to have a clear mind to listen and hear what he has to say back to us. Thank you so much for your time and sharing this with us.
Yes,
I appreciate that. Before we shut down, is there any last thing that comes to your mind before we go ahead and close this off for the day that you want to share? Or do you think we've covered everything that's kind of been on your heart?
I mean, I just think thinking of your creative time differently will give you so much more freedom. And when you decide to bring them together, it really genuinely changes things. And I think we have to learn how to give ourselves permission to do that, because it's not a bad thing. You're not asking to do a bad thing. So, and it doesn't have to be worth money or worldly value for it to be worthwhile. So that's the biggest takeaway, I think.
Thank you.
Sure.
You have been such a joy to talk to. I appreciate you being here. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that not delightful? I enjoyed this conversation with her. I appreciated the time that she took out. She has a very busy schedule. Her weeks are packed. But truly, this topic is something that's close to her heart and that she feels very passionate about. And I appreciate her sharing the information that she has. You can visit Kim's website at kimpepper.com. If today's episode encouraged you, share it with a friend. You can also visit me at realpositivechange.com for creative reminders, journaling prompts, and simple practices to carry you into your week. Until next time, take a small moment to create, to notice, and to begin again.